Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Pranzata Podcast. This is your host, Andrea Pranzatelli. This is episode number 124 on the Pranzata Podcast on YouTube. Today is a solo episode. I've had a very crazy week, so I did not have time to book an in-person guest, but don't worry, we have some in-person guests coming soon. So for today, I took questions and answers from the listeners, and I'm going to answer some of those questions in the episode today. Before we get into it, if you are new to this channel and you enjoy what you hear today, please don't forget to hit subscribe. It is my mission to grow this channel this year, and your support would be incredibly helpful. Okay, so I actually didn't get a lot of questions today compared to normal. Usually I get an abundance of questions and I can't take them all because then the podcast would be too long. Today I only had 2 questions, which isn't a bad thing because I'm having a very busy week. So then it'll lend me the opportunity to make this podcast a little shorter so I can tend to my crazy week. I don't know. I guess maybe because it's the summer, people are really busy with vacations and whatnot, and they didn't have, time to submit a question, but that's fine. Okay. So the first question is from James Mack Comedy. James Mack is a listener of the podcast. He's a good friend of mine. He's a really nice guy. He's a stand-up comedian from New York City area. James Mack Comedy asks, what is a skill you think most people are missing that could improve their life today? So the first thing that comes to mind, and I can't really speak for all people, so I'm sort of just basing this on my own personal experience and what helped me to improve my life and to see gradual, long-lasting improvements in my life. And that quality is conscientiousness. So for those who don't understand what that is or what that means, I'm pretty sure most of you, understand what it means, but just in case, conscientiousness is something that describes being able to be conscious of your actions and how they not only affect you in the immediate moment, but how they affect the long term. So this is something that I did not have my entire life. I've always been, I would say the opposite of conscientiousness would be, well, there could be 2 opposites. There could be impulsivity, or there could just be depression, I guess you could call it, someone who doesn't take action at all because they're overwhelmed. But I was more the type of person who was very impulsive with my actions. I wanted something and I wanted it now. I was the type of person who would take out a credit card if I wanted something in the moment, that type of thing. Conscientiousness is a skill that I didn't really develop until this year, to be quite honest. And it's something that I've immediately noticed my life improving in so many ways. The reason I developed this skill was because I was stuck in a really difficult situation where I was getting out of a relationship and I really didn't have any savings. I didn't have any money. And I was kind of pushed against a wall in a situation where I was like, okay, if I stay with this person and I move in with them and we continue our plans to get a house together and potentially get married together, I'll be safe. I'll have a place to live. I'll have money. I'll be secure. But there was a lot of issues in that relationship and I was not happy in that relationship. So I felt very pushed in a corner, and there was a deadline too because we were planning to move into this house within a few weeks. So I made a pretty radical decision to follow the less safe path of what was in my heart and understanding that I knew this was not the correct relationship for me. And which sounds like impulsivity, but trust me, it was a well thought out decision. It took me like 8 months to think this decision out. It happened to be that around that deadline is when I pulled the plunge to move forward with this decision. However, when I moved out, I had to let go of all my impulsive behaviors. Everything that I did, because I was in a serious state of survival. I was like, okay, it started with money. Like I had to think about money constantly, and I had to think about, okay, and I was never that type of person. I was always the type of person who didn't check the prices on things at the store. Just made a lot of really impulsive financial decisions. But now at this point, everything that had to do with money, not only did I have to think about how it would affect me in that moment, but I thought about how would it affect me next year, next day, etc. Recently, side note, but a parallel to what I'm talking about here, I'm a singer and a speaker, obviously, on this podcast. And because of that, I have to take care of my vocal health. So I put a lot of thought into how to keep my voice healthy so I can continue doing what I do as a singer and a speaker and a teacher too. I'm also a teacher. In my trying to understand how to maintain the health of my vocal cords, I actually found out that hydrating yourself, when you drink water today, you're not actually hydrating yourself today. You're hydrating yourself 1 or 2 days in advance. So for example, if you have a big gig, like a big music gig coming up, you can't not drink water all week and then the morning of the gig decide to drink a gallon of water, because that water the effects of that water don't show up until a day or two later. So that's kind of a metaphor or a parallel to exactly what I'm talking about. That I actually apply that to everything in my life now. I think, okay, it started with money, like I said, because it was a necessity for survival. But now I really just, everything I do, I think, okay, what am I doing now? How is this going to affect me tomorrow? And the more you develop this skill, you start to, hold on, my cat's crying. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay, and we are back. Sorry about that, guys. It was very close to feeding time for my cats. So they, even though we still had a good 45 minutes till it was their feeding time, they start crying for their food like 45 minutes before it's time to eat. It drives me crazy, but I had to go take care of that so I can continue this podcast without cat meows in the background. Even though that's kind of cute, it would be very annoying. Okay, so where was I? Okay, so I was saying I pretty much live by that metaphor of the water, and what you drink today will actually hydrate you for tomorrow. And like I said, it started with money as a necessity for survival, but now I really extend it to everything I do. Like even, for example, I'm trying to think of like a common everyday example. Okay, let's say you get a job offer that let's say right now you need a lot of money, and you get a job offer that pays a lot of money. However, this job requires a lot of hours, more hours than you can physically manage. So if we were thinking impulsively about this, we might say, okay, take this job, you need the money and you need it now. But if you're thinking about the long-term effects, and like I said, if you develop if you develop the skill of being conscientious, you might say, okay, well, I'm going to get the money now, but as a result, I'm going to get incredibly sick. I'm going to be bombarded with medical bills because I'm going to be too sick to take care of myself. I'm not going to have any time or any energy for my family. So not only am I going to accumulate lots of bills from being sick all the time or having to go out to eat all the time because I don't have time to cook and not have a family. Yes, in the immediate now, it seems like the right idea to take on this job. But when I really think about how this is going to affect me in the long term, it might actually drown my bank account and it will make me miserable. So therefore, this is not a good decision. So just things like that. I've really developed this skill of understanding that life is sort of a game. It's kind of a game of chess, and you have to think about making chess. You have to think 10 moves ahead when you're making decisions in life. And again, this is not something I was good at. This is really a new skill. And the more you practice it, the stronger and stronger it gets. And I feel like in the past, I would have never called myself a conscientious person. And now I 100% would call myself a conscientious person. And I think it's a skill that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. So I don't regret putting in the time and energy into developing this skill. So that would be my answer. Again, I can't speak for all the population. I don't know, maybe a lot of people already have this skill, but I can only speak from my personal experience about if it helped me so much. I think it would help other people who do not have this skill and who tend to be a little more impulsive or more on the depressive side where they don't take any action at all. Because inaction is also something that affects your future as well. Not taking any action at all is just as negative as taking impulsive action. Okay. So again, like I said, I only had 2 questions, and then I'm going to add my own topic at the end. The next question is from KK in the City. She was just on my podcast at episode 123. She's a stand-up comedian from New York City. We had a great conversation. I recommend listening to that episode. She asks me, what do you do when you have no work on a weekday and plan to be alone? So for me, I'm very much a creature of habit. I'm a little too much. Like, I like order and I like routine. And I'm really unhappy if I don't have order and routine in my life. So to be quite honest, I kind of live every day of my life the same. So even on my day off, I wouldn't really change it. I might add in time for friends and family on my day off because you just said if you're going to be alone. So that takes care of that. Well, I was going to say there, if I know I have a day off from work, I would still live my life the same way that I did every single day, but then I would add some time for friends and family on the day. But that's not your question. Your question is, what would I do if I was alone? I would pretty much do what I do every day, even on my work days, on my time off. I would take as much time as I could to work on things, kind of like going hand in hand what I said in the beginning of the episode, thinking about hydrating yourself today to see the fruits of tomorrow. I would know I have that extra time to get more things done like that. So for me, that would include playing piano, working out and exercising, reading. I try to read every day, so I would just do more of it on my day off. Meditating. I'm a big fan of prayer and meditation. I do that every single day, and I might, if I knew I had an entire day off, I might make it fancier, like go to a public park and do it or something like that. I would say the only thing I would probably add on my day off, if I knew I had the whole day off that, could be different than a regular weekday, would probably be I might record a solo music video. I don't have a lot of free time these days to record like a video on my YouTube of me playing solo piano. So if I knew I had a day off, I might do that. Or I might indulge in a TV show because I don't get to do that every single day. So I might kind of binge watch a TV show, a few episodes, and I would still do that. Like, I would still maybe watch 3 or 4 episodes of a show while still doing all the other stuff. I'm usually pretty productive on my days off, and I make use of the time as much as possible on my days off. Okay, so those were the only 2 actual questions I got today. And by the way, if you want to submit a question for Q&A episodes like today, you can look in the information section below. You can follow me on Instagram, and usually when I'm doing a solo episode, I'll post about it in my story and people could submit a question in the story. Or you can literally just write a question in the comment section below and I'll take note of it. And the next time I do a solo episode, I will include it. Okay, so since today I didn't get that many questions and answers, I included my own topic to conclude the episode today. And it's a pretty big topic, so I figured it would take a decent amount of time. So right now I want to talk about basically good and evil. It's been on my mind a lot. And I want to talk about the philosophy of forgiving your enemies and being friends with your enemies and being kind with your enemies, which is a message of the teachings of Jesus. So a little background about why I'm even bringing this up. So I talked about this on another episode on my podcast. I think it was maybe the last time I did a solo episode, that right now I'm on a journey of really diving deep into spirituality, and I'm including all spiritual texts as a part of this research and discovery of spirituality. And that includes Hinduism, that includes the Bible, which is what I'm reading now, which is where I'm getting with this. That includes less common spiritual practices like modern day esoteric type of practices. So I'm just kind of diving deep and learning about a lot of different religions, a lot of different spiritual practices. And right now I'm reading the Bible. Now, interestingly enough, I'm somebody who likes to bounce around from multiple books at the same time. So usually when I'm reading about 4 different books at the same time. So right now, while I'm reading the Bible, I'm also simultaneously reading this book called 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. Robert Greene is a modern day podcaster, author, and philosopher. He wrote this book called The 48 Laws of Power. I'm not sure when he wrote this. I'm not sure if this was his first book. It might have been his first book, but I know it's his most well-known book, and it's the one that gets the most attention, and along with that, the most controversy. The 48 Laws of Power got both a lot of praise and a lot of hate. Just to explain a little bit about the 48 Laws of Power. So basically, I haven't finished the book yet, but I've read enough of it to understand what the book is about. The 48 Laws of Power is basically a book about understanding the power tactics that other people use. And in the very beginning of the book, he talks about why he wrote the book. And he says that he believes that the fight and the struggle for power is something that's going to exist no matter what. And you would be naive and you would get trampled on if you did not learn and not educate yourself on the ways in which people manipulate with power. And furthermore, he makes the claim that you should manipulate others with power, because if you don't, you're going to get trampled on in life. So interesting fact about this book is that it was banned in all prisons because the book was apparently too effective and considered to be a dangerous tool and weapon for prisoners to use against the guards and to use against the other prisoners as well. Now, why I'm bringing this up, I'm finding it incredibly interesting to be reading the Bible and to be learning about Jesus, because furthermore, not only am I reading the Bible, but when I told my parents that I'm reading the Bible, my dad told me that if I want to learn, like a fun way to learn about Jesus, to watch this TV show called The Chosen. And The Chosen is a modern day show. I think you can find it on Amazon Prime Video, but it's a modern day show about Jesus and his disciples. And apparently there's a projected 7 seasons of this show. And right now they're still creating it. There's only 5 seasons, I believe, right now. And I'm in season 2. But anyways, so watching this show along with reading the Bible and then simultaneously reading the 48 Laws of Power, these two ways of thinking, the ways of Jesus, which is all about love and kindness and compassion towards evil and your enemies, and forgiving your enemies and forgiving evil that has been done upon you, versus Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power, which is all about getting your power back. So I'm feeling very confused and very conflicted while learning about these two philosophies side by side, because I find incredible value in both of these philosophies. And I also find flaw in both of these philosophies. So I want to discuss this today. And keep in mind that this is something I'm still discovering and still trying to figure out the answer to. So if anybody listening to this has any insight on their thoughts about this, please include it below. But the main question that I'm posing here that is very confusing to answer is, should you love your enemies like Jesus believed and that Jesus taught to his followers? Or should you be fighting for your power back like Robert Greene is teaching? Or is there a way to find a balance between both of these states so you can learn how to use a little bit of each when the time is necessary? Now, interesting enough, as I'm contemplating all of this week, I was really tested with a lot of evil and a lot of enemies. Just to explain a little bit of what happened this week, it's been a crazy week. That's why I said in the beginning of this episode, I didn't really have time to book a guest because I was dealing with so much. First thing, my bank account was hacked, and it appears that it was hacked by a local merchant in my neighborhood and not from something online. And the reason I say that, I live in Philadelphia and my debit card was hacked into. And when I traced where all the purchases were made in Philadelphia. And a lot of people are asking me, like, are you sure you don't have a friend or a boyfriend who's accidentally using your card? No. First of all, the places they were going were not places that any of my friends go to. And second of all, I'm new in this neighborhood. I don't have a boyfriend. I have very little friends here. I mean, I have friends here, but not like ones that would be using my debit card. You know what I mean? I have more acquaintances here. So I don't have family here. So no, unless there happens to be some by some coincidence, there's an internet hacker that happened to coincidentally live in Philadelphia at the same time. There's of course that opportunity or that possibility, but I think more than likely I used my debit card at a local merchant and they either took a picture of it or they were able to, maybe it was a small business and whoever worked there, maybe an assistant manager was able to hack the system, a system that has the credit card numbers, something like that. I don't know, but all I know is that somebody hacked into my account and has been buying, it appears to be food. They've been buying all different kinds of Chinese food and KFC and stuff. And it had been going on. And while the person wasn't making really big purchases, it was adding up over time. And I didn't catch it until a week after it had been happening. So thank God I was able to get reimbursed by my bank. They did credit me for the things that were stolen on my account. But regardless, it really threw me off balance in my life because I had to spend a lot of time on the phone, making phone calls, etc. And then not only that, I had to put in a lot of work into why before I get off track, let me explain why I'm even relating back to this. Because then it got me in the mindset of who are my enemies in this town? Because it was something that happened in my town. Who are my enemies in this town? Who's the piece of that hacked my account in this neighborhood? And I almost felt like investigating and looking for them and getting vengeance, essentially. I wanted to figure out who it is. I wanted to know their name and I wanted to call them out and get them fired at their job. But anyways, that's one event that happened. Another event that happened was at the train station. I got groped by a group of teenagers. And it wasn't even that's sexual assault. I actually had to look into this. I'm like, was that sexual assault? Like what just happened to me? So I looked it up online. You will go to prison not prison. You will go to jail. You will get handcuffed right then and there if you get caught groping a woman. That is considered sexual assault. So I went to the train station, and not at the train station, but right outside of the train station, there was a group of teenage boys walking by, and one of them started groping my butt. One of them started grabbing my and I felt very helpless because even though I wasn't attacked, it seems like a minor offense. It wasn't even the fact that he touched my butt that traumatized me. It really was the fact that I was just facing evil. This person, I think from his perspective, like from what I'm gathering, I don't even think this was something sexual. I think it was more that he wanted to impress his friends and he wanted to look tough in front of his friends. Yes, he did something sexual. I'm not saying he didn't do something sexual, but I'm saying the motivation behind his actions was to be powerful, and he wanted to be powerful at my expense. He didn't care how I felt. He didn't care that I felt very vulnerable and very fear of because when something like that's happening, you don't know what this person is capable of. You kind of just freeze up, and especially because it was a group of them. If it was just one of them, I might have felt comfortable using mace, but because it was a group of them, I felt pretty helpless, and I felt like I kind of had to just freeze up and play dead essentially for my survival. Thank God nothing bad happened, but it really got me thinking about, like I said, more on this topic of evil, because I was really angry. And as a result, every teenage boy that I saw for the rest of the week, I hated, even though like it was just this one teenage boy who was doing it to impress his friends. Now I just had hatred and anger and resentment in my heart and lack of trust for every teenage boy that I saw after that. And I started thinking, I'm not completely wrong. I think teenage boys are dangerous because I think there's a lot of them out there who are misguided and who are big enough and strong enough to do destruction, but also not mature enough to know the difference between right and wrong. And their main goal is to impress their friends. And that's why you hear about, teens having gun violence and stuff like that, because you have these really like fully sexually mature human beings who are capable of destruction, but who are not mentally developed yet because they're still so young. And it's a disaster. So I'm not completely wrong on my analysis of being afraid of teenage boys, but I think you guys get what I'm saying. As a result of that interaction, I carried around a lot of hatred, a lot of resentment, and a lot of lack of trust for what now I perceive as my enemies, which is teenage men. And lastly, another thing that happened this week that didn't help was I witnessed you guys are going to be like, maybe you should move out of Philadelphia. So just to explain like where these things happened, I live, where I live in Philadelphia is kind of on the fringe of a safe neighborhood, but not too far away. A couple blocks down, there's a neighborhood that is known for not being as safe. There's a train station there that happens to be the closest train station to my neighborhood. Now, before people freak out and like wonder, are you okay? Are you in a safe neighborhood? Yes, my neighborhood, the block that I live on, feels very safe. I don't feel threatened or anything like that. That train station that I have to walk to that happens to be relatively close to my house and is just more convenient, my thought process was, well, it's right on the border of an unsafe neighborhood. So if I go during the day, it can't possibly be that bad. But now I'm learning that's not true. Even during the day, it's just not safe to go over there. So going forward, I'm just going to take, I've learned my lesson, and I'm just going to take the extra time to walk 15, 20 minutes to the train station that is in a safe neighborhood. So before people worry about my safety, that's why I've been witnessing these things. But I had to say that before I back up my next thing I'm going to say. I was running late to work, so I went to that train station again that was on one of the bad streets, and I went during the day, so I thought I would be fine. And nothing happened to me, but I witnessed an act of violence that was it was almost surreal to even watch. I saw this car driving so fast. It must have been when I say 50 miles per hour, that's not going to sound like a lot, but it was on like a residential street, so it was a lot. I saw this like 50 miles per hour car driving down a residential street, rush over to the side and screeched. And then when it screeched, it threw a woman, whoever was driving that car, threw a young woman. She looked about 18 years old, threw her out of the car, and then drove away really fast. And then that woman ran out of her car screaming barefoot. So I don't know. I don't mean to laugh. I'm just like, wow. It was just numbing to see. I almost, when I witnessed that, I almost didn't even process what it was at first. At first, I thought it was like young kids playing around because I just never imagined seeing something like that. And then after I realized what it was, I actually, when the woman was running, I tried to help her. I tried to like kind of chase her down to help her, like call the cops or something like that to see if she needed anything. But she was so scared that she just kept running, and she was barefoot. So I don't know what happened to her. I don't know if it was like a domestic violence and she had a crazy boyfriend, or if it was like a crazy Uber driver, or she was kidnapped. But either way, I just saw her violently thrown out and terrified for her life, whatever happened to her. And again, why I'm even bringing this up is because all these events happened in a week, right when I'm learning all this. So it's like right now I'm really being challenged with acts of evil, witnessing acts of evil, experiencing acts of evil. And simultaneously, the same week that I'm reading these two texts, reading about the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, and then reading the Bible and watching this show about Jesus and learning about the teachings of Jesus. So it's like, it's so interesting, and it's so pressing right now for me to feel like I need to understand what this all means and what this is all about. On one hand, the 48 Laws of Power, I do agree with some of the things that you should. Okay, my brain's a little frozen right now how to explain this. After witnessing the things that I saw and experienced this week, I'm starting to really believe Robert Greene in the sense that the struggle for power is real. Like, everything I witnessed this week was essentially some type of struggle for power. The woman being thrown out the window, or not at the window, at the car, was somehow he wanted some type of power over her. me being groped at the train station by these young boys. They wanted to feel powerful at my expense. And somebody hacking into my bank account, they wanted, granted, they might have just been a poor person, but they wanted some type of power, even if that power was financial resources. They wanted to, it could have been a power thing. It could have been that they got some type of thrill out of stealing. That could definitely be it. But even if it comes down to they were just a poor person trying to figure out a way to feed their family, it still money and resources still comes down to power. So Robert Greene is absolutely right that power and the struggle for power is a real thing, and you do need to educate yourself and understand that and know that and not be naive to that is the reality of existence. We will never reach a point of utopia and peace and love amongst all human beings. It's just not going to happen. Evil and destruction is always going to exist. It always has existed. It always will exist. It's there. It's real. And according to Robert Greene, you better play the game if you want to survive. And that doesn't necessarily mean to become evil. I think what he's trying to say is understand and educate yourself on evil so you could survive and protect yourself. On the other hand, I do also see Jesus. It's funny that I'm like relating Jesus and Robert Greene to each other, but it's interesting. I see Jesus's point that if evil is going to always exist and there's nothing you could do about it, the only way to fight it is to not be evil back. And I kind of saw that in myself in the way I was reacting to the evil deeds that had been done to me this week. Like I said, when those teenage boys groped me, assaulted me, I then had this really bitter resentment and anger in my heart towards anybody I saw that looked like them. But as a result, I'm spreading hate around the world. I think at one point I was walking on the street and I overheard somebody say, "What's her problem?" Like, the energy you carry does affect other people. So now it's kind of like evil and hatred is this spirit. It's kind of like these boys had the affliction of evil and power in their hearts. They wanted to, and it's like they gave it to me. It's like they gave me a demon and passed it to me. And now I'm carrying the weight of this demon in my heart. And I'm maybe not as aggressively, but still passing it on to other people just by my energy, just by the energy I'm carrying. I'm walking around bitter, angry, resentful. And now it's just going to keep spreading like an infection. So I understand Jesus's point as well. In comparison to Robert Greene, it's like, yes, this evil is going to exist, but the only way to combat it is to let it go, just to let it go and to still remain positive and still remain loving. And I think that's what he means by loving your enemies, is by not giving into this cycle of evil. Now, I do think that there's got to be a line somewhere. Like, I don't think you can walk around smiling when you're in danger. I think you do need to protect yourself, and you do need to be able to defend yourself when your life is an immediate threat. So I want to make that clear. But I think if you've survived an act of evil and you're alive and safe and healthy today, I think what Jesus is trying to say is that rather than carrying the weight of the anger and resentment in your heart, to try to find forgiveness towards your enemies and to pray for them to be able to find a path towards love. I think that's what he's saying, and I think that's what he means. Again, I'm a little resistant to completely follow this. While I do see the purpose, and I do see the intention, and I do see the value in this line of thinking, I think where I get a little bit confused is when you have people like, there's no changing them. There's no prayer. And when I think of extreme examples, I think of people like Hitler, Jeffrey Dahmer, serial killers, some people that seem like they were just born, like they're just born from the devil, it seems like. And I think that's where I draw a line, I guess you could say. Or I don't even know if it's a line, because I'm still unsure about how to manage that. But I think that's where I get confused, is where, how do you treat people like that? Should you forgive people like that? Should you have forgiveness in your heart for people that have committed such acts of evil that no amount of prayer or love and compassion towards this person could ever change their heart. What do you do about that? I'm not saying, well, Jesus screwed up or he's wrong. I'm just saying this is where I get confused. Like, this is where I don't understand what to do. I will say there are some things that kind of help me with some of the confusion I'm feeling. So, for example, when it comes towards forgiving people that hurt you, when it's less severe cases of evil, and because I think the capacity of evil and wrongdoing exists in every single human being. I don't think there's a single person on this earth that hasn't done something with hatred in their heart at one point or anger in their heart at one point. So I think when it comes to forgiving less serious offenses or people that have proven to have a heart despite some of their decisions they've made leaning towards evil, I think what helps me in cases where there's no way to reconcile a relationship with this person again, I think what helps me in those cases is to say, I can love and forgive this person from a distance. You don't have to have somebody actively involved in your life in order to love and forgive. You can let somebody go, but then on your private time, pray for this person to find a path towards healing and love for their own life. And I think that's a good compromise to make in situations like that. Also in cases where, because I think it's only human nature to want revenge towards the people that have hurt you and to want justice towards the wrongdoings. I think that's a normal human reaction and at times a justified human reaction. But I think you can get carried away with that and wanting to get revenge. And then again, your heart becomes filled with hate as a result. I think what helps me manage that is I've let myself, I believe in karma. I do believe that, and whatever you want to call it, you can call it karma, you can say God taking care of it, whatever you want to call it. But I do believe that what's helped me let go of anger in those situations is telling myself, okay, I don't need to seek revenge because karma is real and this person will get penalties for what they did in their own time, in their own way. I don't have to be the one responsible for it. And I think that's kind of what helped me in situations like that. So, I've gotten some peace with this mental debate about this split mentality of, do you forgive your enemies and do you love your enemies? Or do you act more of a place of trying to get your power back, like Robert Greene says? I think, like I said, I've come to some places of peace between these two states, but there are still some questions about this that goes unanswered. And there's still some confusion here about what's the right mentality to adapt. Again, I'm going to repeat what I said before. I think right now what makes the most sense to me is to kind of adapt both mentalities and to know when to pull out each one as necessary, to mostly lean into forgiving your enemies and learning to love people despite the things they do that lean towards evil, but at the same time, educating yourself on the possibility of evil and learning the tricks of evil so that you can then protect yourself in the face of it. That's where I'm at with it. But this is all a journey for me. I'm still really new. I still haven't finished the Bible and I still haven't finished 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. I mean, when I say the Bible, and I'm not sure if I'll ever finish it. There's a lot to read. There's like many books of the Bible, but I think you know what I'm saying. I'm still pretty new in learning about these things. So there's still time for me to lean more in another direction if my mind gets shifted in another direction. But right now I'm kind of split between these two states and finding compromise between the two. Anyways, that was a pretty intense episode. That's all I have to say today. Again, if you like what you heard today and you have some ideas about some of the questions I posed or some answers that you've come up in your own life about these topics, please include it below. And again, if you enjoyed what you heard today, please don't forget to hit subscribe. It is my mission to be able to do this podcast regularly as a career and to be able to make a living off of it, not out of selfishness, but so that I can sustain this and keep doing it and growing it and being able to hire assistants to help me with the videos, to help me with the editing. So I want this to be something bigger, and you have no idea how much it helps when you hit subscribe or comment or share this with a friend. It really just helps everything go into action. And I promise to do my best to make this podcast better for the listeners as a result. And that's it. Pranzata Podcast, episode 124. Have a good day, guys. Bye.